everybody. Oh, hey now. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It is a brand new edition of Over the Line Hot Takes. Welcome back to the show. So glad you could be here, as always, as I've got a ton of stuff to talk about. If you listen to the radio show, I was on fire today. I'm telling you, I felt like I was on fire. Because one of the things that I don't want to say I enjoy talking about it, because it's not something that I'm particularly proud of for our country. But one of the things I do enjoy, expressing to people, should I say, maybe even educating, is about the horrors of January 6th, but not in the way that y'all think. Not in the way that some people think, should I say. The horrors that were committed by our own government. That's what I enjoy expressing. But before we get into that, I want to address Joe Biden meeting with the Brazilian president today. As you can imagine, it was an absolute disaster of epic proportions, because anytime Joe Biden meets any world leader, it always turns out bad. First of all, to get the thing started, Joe Biden walks on stage, and he almost knocks over the flag, the Brazilian flagpole. Look in the right corner of the screen.
The President of the United States and the President of the Federative Republic of Brazil, accompanied by the Director General of the International Labor Organization.
And then he shuffles over to the podium with all 5 people clapping for the President of the United States. He has no idea where he's at. Oh, here comes Brazil's president. What do we do? Oh, get over here on this side. Don't want to confuse old Joe Biden. So, could you imagine the optics if Joe Biden would have walked on stage and had knocked the pole over? Then, you got to have an earpiece if you've got somebody speaking a different language. First of all, I think if you're a leader of a country, maybe it's worth, maybe kind of learning some other languages. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't have to be a requirement. I don't know. But at least know your own language, which our president does not. But anyway, because Lula, the new socialist president of Brazil, which Joe Biden absolutely loves that guy, he has to wear an earpiece so he can understand what he's saying. He's got to have somebody translate what Lula is saying. And, of course, Joe Biden had to fight with his earpiece for a solid 5 minutes. Look how confused he looks.
Well, first of all, I would like to greet President Biden and to say to President Biden, can you hear me, President Biden? This is an historical moment for Brazil.
Look at
and
him.
For the U.S. President Biden, can you hear me? You can? Yes, good.
And then his earpiece falls out again. Look at his face.
With the U.S. delegation that is here with me, I'd like to greet my wife that is also here. I'd like to greet the Brazilian trade unionists that came to.
Look at this, y'all. That's your president right there. Look at the face he's making. That was a meeting with another world leader today. In case you missed it, wanted to make sure you guys saw what is the disaster known as the President of the United States. But that's the least of our problems, ladies and gentlemen, is the absolute least of our problems. First of all, don't let me go without saying this. Proud sponsors of this Over the Line Hot Takes is our boys over at Wild Hair Jerky. All I ask you to do is one thing. Go over to their Facebook page right here, baby. Hit that like button. Once you hit that like button, you're going to be in the loop. They're right around the corner from opening their doors. We just want to get the message out before they do. So when they're ready to go and they're ready to ship beef jerky to your house, you're the first to know. You're able to hop on it, get them to send it out to your place. You're going to eat it up. You're going to love it. As you know, I have Wild Hair Jerky on standby 24/7. I keep it right here at my side. It's like an emergency. It's like a health kit, like what do you call that thing? First aid kit. That's what I'm trying to say. It's like a first aid kit. Always got to have it on standby because you never know when you're going to need beef jerky, especially when it comes to wild hair jerky. So y'all hook that up. Wild hair jerky, HARE, wild hair jerky. Go to the Facebook page, click like, show them some love, even send them a message and say, hey now, thanks for making sure that Over the Line can come to my internets every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Because those guys are the ones that make it happen. Wild Hair Jerky and Vapor Forge, we appreciate them more than they know. Before I get into a hearing today with Merrick Garland, we carried some of that live on the radio show, but because it was happening in real time, I had to just kind of do a hit or miss deal, and I don't never know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen. So you can't get a whole lot. But after the show, I'm able to go back and kind of see what was going on, and I want to hit some highlights. But first, yesterday we talked a lot about the immigration issue and how much of a disaster it is for this country, how much of a disaster it's been for border states like Texas for a long time, and nobody gave a crap about Texas. And now New York's dealing with it. Mayor Eric Adams is essentially saying, hey, we're done for if something doesn't change. Yeah, we've been saying that for a long time, Colt. Welcome to the party. Well, now today is a little bit of a different story. In Eagle Pass, Texas, you've got well over 1,000 migrants marching, as we speak, into Eagle Pass, Texas, with many of these people being from Venezuela. We're looking at 4,000 migrants crossing the border today. 4,000. Millions have already made their way across. Millions more are on their way. These are not just migrants from Venezuela. These are military-age men migrants that are literally invading our border as we speak, and we're supposed to act like, God, this is no big deal. Look at this endless line of people. This is happening right now, Eagle Pass, Texas.
Hola, ¿de dónde son? Venezuela. Hola, ¿de dónde son?
Culpa de una dictadura.
Just a massive amount of people, a line of people that has no end to it whatsoever. They don't see it into this. It's just a constant stream of people that, just look at these images. This is insanity. This is insanity. Hold on, let me show you a couple more. Check this out right here. This is crazy. Look at the sheer volume of people. The lines go on and on and on and don't end. I got more for you. Just bear with me. Check this out. Here's more of the long lines in Eagle Pass, Texas. Again, here's what I want you to note. You don't see the end of the line. They just keep coming and coming. And today, it's just Venezuela Day. That's just one of countless countries that are dumping their people. God knows who they are. Dumping their people across our borders. You think they're sending... Look at this photo here. This is from... Hold on. This is from somebody's camera. Look at them crossing the river. They're not stopping. This is so dangerous for our country because we have no idea who these people are. And what's HHS doing? What's Alejandro Mayorkas doing? What's Joe Biden doing? The people that are supposed to be protecting. Hey, keep in mind, Border Patrol, our brave men and women in Border Patrol, they love to kick these people out. They love to tell them, turn around, go back. We're full. but they're not allowed to. And these are compassionate people that are working at the border. They care about these people. When you work on the border, you care about immigrants. But they know what this is doing to the country. And the people that are supposed to be in charge of keeping this country safe are doing the exact opposite, just like Merrick Garland on Capitol Hill today. Being asked questions about the obvious corruption, not just in the Biden family, but in the entire administration, and why the DOJ is continuing to run cover and pretending like they're on the side of justice here. Here's one from Matt Gaetz earlier talking about Hunter Biden and his really high-class art business.
I guess I'm just wondering, Mr. Attorney General, has anyone at the department told President Biden to knock it off with Hunter? I mean, you guys are charging Hunter Biden on some crimes, investigating him on others. You've got the president bringing Hunter Biden around to state dinners. Has anyone told him to knock it off?
Our job in the Justice Department is to pursue our cases without reference to what's happening in the outside world.
Just yes or no. Have you done that?
That is what we do.
So it's a no?
No one that I know of has spoken to the White House about the Hunter Biden case.
I'm wondering then.
Of course not.
Okay, I got it. So Hunter Biden is selling art to pay for his $15,000 a month rent in Malibu. How can you guarantee that the people buying that art aren't doing so to gain favor with the president?
The job of the Justice Department is to investigate criminal allegations. You have information.
Are you investigating this? I mean, someone who bought Hunter Biden's art ended up with a prestigious appointment to a federal position. Doesn't it look weird that he's become this immediate success in the art world as his dad is president of the United States? Isn't that odd?
I'm not going to comment about any specific...
Not going to comment, not going to investigate. So
right.
Hunter Biden associate Devin Archer told us that Hunter sold the appearance of access to then Vice President Biden. Are you confident he has stopped doing that?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Hunter Biden associate Devin Archer told us that Hunter sold the appearance of access to then Vice President Biden. Are you confident he has stopped?
I'm going to say again that all these matters are within the purview of Mr. Weiss. I have not interfered with them, and I do not...
Yeah, but if you were confident that he'd stopped...
Yeah, right. Yeah. We understand what you're trying to say, Merrick Garland. We know you're running cover for these people. You know they're committing crimes. It's got to be incredibly frustrating for Merrick Garland because he doesn't want to have to cover for people. I'm sure these people in Washington, D.C. are so full of themselves. In order to be successful in Washington, D.C., you have to think very highly of yourself. I mean, even as a politician, what do you spend your entire campaign doing? Talking about how great you are. And then you get voted in, your suspicions are confirmed. You are great. Everybody voted for you. Then you've got staffers all around you that are telling you how great you are. And so you become a pompous a-hole that's full of yourself. Washington, D.C. is full of those people. But they also care about public opinion. It's why Republicans are so easy to fold. They want their legacy. They want to be immortalized in Washington, D.C., known as the best president ever, known as the best attorney general ever. He cares about it. Merrick Garland cares about that. So he's got to be incredibly frustrated to have to continue to run cover for the Biden crime family because, yes, they've committed many crimes in the past, and they're still committing these crimes. It's almost as if they have the inability to say, hey, while I'm president, let's take a break on the influence peddling. No. They can't do that. They don't have the ability. It's all they know. Corruption and scheming and scamming the system is all they know. And so this attorney general is tasked with covering that up. There's one representative in particular out of Indiana, and y'all heard me mention this on the radio show, named Victoria Sparks. She is a Ukrainian-born representative, and she's a firebrand. She threw out a line of questioning to Merrick Garland about his inability to see blatant corruption and go after that corruption. And instead of doing that, going after average Americans who, frankly, had done nothing wrong. I want you to see what she had to say just moments ago. Listen to this.
In my town, FBI phone numbers all over the district. Please call that. People are truly afraid. I just want to make sure if you're not aware that you are. And this is a big problem when people are afraid of their own government. And I'll share some other things. We're talking about justice system. I don't question, you're probably not a bad person. I don't know you. But what I'll tell you, you're in charge of the department. And people right now feel, I look at Durham report and I call on the FISA violations of queries of millions of Americans, right? It's like KGB, but when I read Durham reports, we have this, you have a nice, playbook. First, let's have a special counsel, and then you don't have to answer any questions here. Then, let's extend slow walk investigation on Hillary Clinton, on Hunter. Everything is slow walked. We were very quick on Donald Trump, but you were very slow walked. Then, by the time, that investigation ended, statute of limitation expired, and all of your agents need to be tested for amnesia. No one recalls anything. Okay, you probably should have as part of your hiring policy. So no one held accountable, which was egregious what happened, in that report. When I read about them, I can't believe it happened in the United States of America. This is my frustration. I'll be honest with you. Then it's very interesting, regardless what it is, even people in Obama administration raise concerns. How can president's sons be serving on, corrupt Ukrainian oligarchs? Do you understand that it actually can undermine the one Ukrainian effort and policy? I think these concerns were raised. The Obama administration didn't do anything about it. These people are dying right now, and Americans don't trust this president. So I want to ask you one thing. I don't need answer because I know you're not going to, but I think you're probably a good American and you care. And a lot of these people are so afraid they cover up this stuff, I think, in your department because they're embarrassed that what we became as a country, to say that what our Department of Justice became. That allows Russians to do propaganda in Chinese. It allows them to destabilize our country. That is danger to our republic. It is significant danger. And I have just one more question from you. I agree on corporate crimes and FISA stuff, even with Democrats, that we need to do a better job. One more question for you. Do you believe that, you talk about rights to vote, but do you believe that only U.S. citizens should be voting in this election and doing anything to make sure that only eligible people vote in elections?
Wow, yes. She makes some fascinating points right there. Two things. She, first of all, does what every representative in Congress should be doing, and that's talking about our elections. Because guess what? The Democrats are working full steam ahead right now to subvert the 2024 election. That's the first thing. Second thing is she makes the point, and you can imagine her frustration coming from a place like Ukraine. She knows it's corrupt. Imagine her frustration coming from a different part of the world where democracy isn't really democracy, coming over here to America and then watching this. The same thing that's happened in country after country that have destroyed so-called democracies just happening all over again. Like it's never happened before. Like we don't have a guide showing us where this kind of behavior takes us. But she says because of the corruption in the White House and in the FBI, the DOJ covering it up, whether it's the Bidens, the Obamas, the Clintons, because of that, the American people don't trust the government, and for good reason. But that gives the Chinese and it gives the Russians the ability to put out what she calls propaganda on the internet that only verifies the sentiment of people. They benefit. Russia, China, everybody else, Iran, they benefit from our government being corrupt. They benefit from us not trusting our government. Whether the trust is coming from, or the lack of trust is coming from the right place or not, they're going to benefit from it because they want this country divided. But it seems as if our government wants the same thing. It's almost as if those in office owe favors to places like Russia and China. It's almost like, I don't know, China had given them gifts, giving them diamonds or something, you know? It's crazy. It's as if a president's son has been doing business with a Chinese billionaire. I don't know. I know it sounds crazy. Another reason we don't trust the government is because of January 6th, and this is where I'm going with this. We saw what happened on January 6th. If you're like me, you had suspicions on the day of. And as more and more information started to come out and you started seeing things like confidential informants and how they were picking and choosing who they were going after, you started to realize this wasn't exactly what they were telling us it was. There was a line of questioning from Thomas Massey, which is a Republican representative out of Kentucky, and I believe we played this on the show as well. I think he makes some pretty important points when asking questions to Merrick Garland.
You're citing the Constitution. I'm going to cite it. It's our constitutional duty to do oversight. Now, in that video, that was your answer to a question to me 2 years ago when I said how many agents or assets of the government were present on January 5th and January 6th and agitating in the crowd to go into the Capitol and how many went into the Capitol. Can you answer that now?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Oh, last time, you don't know how many there were or there were none?
I don't know the answer to either of those questions. If there were any, I don't know how many. I don't know whether there are any.
I think you may have just perjured yourself that you don't know that there were any. You want to say that again, that you don't know that there were any?
I have no personal knowledge of this matter. I think what I said last time.
You've had 2 years to find out. And the day, by the way, that was in reference to Ray Epps, and yesterday you indicted him. Isn't that a wonderful coincidence? On a misdemeanor. Meanwhile, you're sending grandmas to prison. You're putting people away for 20 years for merely filming. Some people weren't even there yet. You got the guy on video who's saying go into the Capitol. He's directing people to the Capitol before the speech ends. He's at the site of the first breach. You've got all the goods on him, 10 videos, and it's an indictment for a misdemeanor? The American public isn't buying it. I yield the balance of my time to Chairman Jordan.
May I answer the question?
I'm going to ask you one now. We'll let the gentleman.
Yeah.
Go ahead, but
in discovery, in the cases that were filed with respect to January 6, the Justice Department prosecutors provided whatever information they had about the question that you're asking. With respect to Mr. Epps, the FBI has said that he was not an employee or informant of the FBI. Mr. Epps has been charged, and there's a proceeding, I believe, going on today on that subject.
The charge is a joke. I yield to the chairman.
The time the gentleman has expired.
Do you hear his voice shaking as he answers those questions because he knows he's lying? Now, keep in the back of your mind the confidential human sources. He's talking about, did the FBI, the DOJ have any of their people in the crowd posing as Trump supporters? That's the important thing to note. And you heard what Merrick Garland said. He said, nah, I don't have any personal knowledge of it. I don't know anything about that. I'm only the Attorney General that handles all prosecutions in this country on the federal level. So Matt Gaetz gets another go at it, and he wants to kind of go with the same line of questioning. Hey, what did you know about your people being present on January 6th?
Did the FBI lose count of the number of paid informants on January 6th?
Let me answer your question about China.
I want you to answer this question. I only get 5 minutes. You've already sort of, I think, screwed the pooch on China. So January 6th, did you lose count of the number of federal assets? Did you lose count and order an audit?
Gentleman's time has expired.
I get an answer to the question of did they lose count?
No, let him answer the question.
The time has expired. The Attorney General can respond.
China is the most aggressive, most dangerous adversary that the United States faces, and we are doing everything within our power to rebut that, to stop that, to prevent their invasions, both kinetic, and through cyberspace. And we will continue to do
If someone
that.
gave that answer in your courtroom when you were a judge, you would tell them they were being non-responsive and you would direct them to answer the question.
Point of order, Your Honor.
Time is
badgering the witness.
Point of
Time
order,
is
please.
expired.
I got it. I was
You like Your Honor? You want to stick with that?
Yeah, I was getting laughed at to call me Your Honor.
Point of order either way.
Okay, I understand that too.
All right.
But the gentleman asked his question before his time expired. The Attorney General did not respond to the gentleman's question. I was hoping he would respond to the question about the confidential human sources on January 6th. He didn't respond to that. I'm sure we're going to get an answer to that later.
Of course,
now,
Mr. Chairman. There
now
were
recognize
8
the
questions
gentleman.
before that he was not given a chance to answer.
Understand,
So
but
the witness might have thought.
But the witness doesn't, Mr. Chairman, point of order. The witness does not control the time.
hang on. Exactly
And they're
right.
sitting there running
Members
cover
control
for
the
this
time.
guy. And it was obvious. He's like, I don't want to answer that question. He's already perjured himself, so why not just continue to do it? We know what Thomas Massey said, that he perjured himself. We actually know that to be true because guess what? The Judiciary Committee actually released a report with testimony showing that they knew they had confidential human sources and that they had so many, they didn't even know how many it was. Here's the report right here. Congress of the United States, House of Representatives, Committee on the Judiciary. It goes through the whole thing right there, baby. Committee, they interviewed a guy by the name of Stephen D'Antano. Now, I'm going to explain to you who he is in a moment. He explained, due to the large number of confidential human sources present at the Capitol, the WFO asked the FBI headquarters to do a poll or put out something to people saying, were any CHSs involved, so the FBI could try to ascertain how many CHSs had been in attendance. D'Antano stated after the outreach from the headquarters was when we started getting responses back. As one example, he recalled that a confidential human source from the Kansas City field office was on site at the Capitol and had allegedly been in contact with his handler while at the event. The CHS reported to his handler while they were in the crowd, I think, saying that they were going in. They were trying to stop some of the action happening and they left or whatnot. The report goes on to say this new information is extremely concerning. It suggests that the FBI cannot adequately track the activities and operation of its informants and that it lost control of its CHSs present at the Capitol on January 6th. These revelations reinforce existing concerns identified by Special Counsel Durham about the FBI's use of payment to CHSs who have fabricated evidence and misrepresented information. The Justice Department Inspector General also identified critical problems in the FBI's confidential human sources program, including the FBI's failure to fully vet confidential human sources and the FBI's willingness to ignore red flags that would call into question the informant's reliability. So, this is essentially saying that, yeah, we just did a big dragnet and got as many people involved as we can, but who were these people? Were they Antifa? Were they people that you promised to get a pass on some other criminal charges? Were they criminals themselves? Could be. But there were so many of them that they don't even know how many they had. Now, when it comes to Stephen D'Antano, this guy is a major player in the scheme of bamboozling Americans in a criminal way. Let me explain how. Stephen D'Antano was the director of the FBI field office in Detroit and as of 2020 and before that. He was the field director of the FBI in Detroit when the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot came to fruition. We remember that. It was just in the headlines a week ago about the last 3 people involved in that case being found not guilty in a court of law. Not guilty on all charges. If you don't remember that story, essentially the FBI had concocted this plan to kidnap the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, and turn around and pin it on some other Americans because they wanted to create this narrative that right-wing, radical, white supremacist Trump supporters hated Gretchen Whitmer so much because of her draconian lockdown COVID measures that they were just going to kidnap her and kill her. The FBI came up with that plan, not these people. And these people weren't exactly the brightest of the bunch. These were a few fries short of a Happy Meal type of people, okay? But they got them all tied up in this. They coerced them with drugs. They coerced them with women and got them to say certain things and act like they were going to go along with this plan, even though when you look at the case, they actually made it clear they didn't want to, but they didn't care. The FBI needed a scapegoat. They needed to take down somebody so they could say Gretchen Whitmer's in trouble. The right and Trump are trying to kill Gretchen Whitmer. That's all it was. So Stephen D'Antano, who's the head of the field office in the FBI in Detroit, headed this thing off. Well, after he successfully put together the kidnapping plan and was able to pin it on some Americans, he was magically promoted to the FBI field office in Washington, D.C. And it was just a matter of weeks after being in Washington, D.C., January 6th happened. And if you feel like I do, and I feel like the way I do because of all the evidence that's out there, you can see how the Gretchen Whitmer deal in January 6th look very similar. Very similar tactics. Get some people involved with people that you want to throw in jail, convince them to do something bad, and then turn around and arrest those people. And then the guys that helped you do it, they can get off the hook. Or for optics, we can give them a slap on the wrist. Kind of like Ray Epps recently being finally criminally charged with one misdemeanor of disorderly conduct after 2.5 years. That's how all this played out. That's exactly what happened. And that's who Stephen D'Antano was. This is a very elaborate plan. As a matter of fact, just yesterday, they had Stephen Sund, who was the Capitol Hill police chief on January 6th, who tried to stop January 6th. They had all the information from him that this was going to happen, and they refused to give him backup as it was happening, almost as if they wanted it to continue to go on and turn out as bad as possible. That's why Nancy Pelosi had a camera crew with her that day, ironically. Donald Trump at the time had requested days before that the National Guard come in and be on standby. Nancy Pelosi denied it. Police Chief Stephen Sund asked the same thing. They denied it. Would not do it. They said it was because of the optics. They didn't want the visual of the National Guard on Capitol Hill. But the visual they did want was Trump supporters storming the Capitol and walking through the halls of Congress. That's the visual they wanted. Here's some of Stephen Sund's testimony from yesterday as he explains exactly what they did.
The January 6th attack at the Capitol was preventable. If the intelligence had been accurately reported and the FBI and DHS had followed their policies and established practices, I wouldn't be sitting here today. There was a failure to connect the dots on 9/11 and again on January 6th. I'm concerned if we do not identify and correct these issues, we may fail again in the future. I did everything I could to protect and defend the U.S. Capitol and the members of Congress prior to and on January 3rd. Prior to January 6th and prior to and on January 6th. On January 3rd, I requested the assistance of the National Guard to support my perimeter and was denied by the 2 sergeant-at-arms over the concern for politics and optics. Still concerned for the number of personnel I had on my perimeter, I called the MPD earlier on the morning of January 6th and asked if they could stage additional personnel closer to the Capitol on Constitution Avenue. Less than 2 hours later, we were violently attacked on the west front of the Capitol at 12:53 p.m. I immediately followed up on that morning call and contacted MPD Chief Carroll at 12:55 p.m. and requested those resources. MPD was on the scene within minutes and were assisting my officers in holding the line and delaying the breach of the building. It took 81 agonizing minutes for that mob to fight their way through numerous police lines before they were able to breach the Capitol. The decision to reach out to MPD proved critical in safeguarding the members of Congress. Minutes after the attack began, I made my first call to House Sergeant-at-Arms Paul Irving at 12:58 p.m. to request approval to bring in the National Guard. Let me run it up the chain, and I will get back to you, was his response. It would be 71 minutes before that approval would finally come. Between 12:58 and when I finally received approval for the National Guard at 2:09 p.m., I made 32 calls to coordinate support from my officers, including at least 11 frustrating calls to the Sergeant-at-Arms regarding my request for the National Guard. My calls to my partner law enforcement agencies resulted in hundreds of police officers from around the National Capital Region and as far away as New Jersey responding to assist. After I received approval to call in the National Guard, I then had to beg the Pentagon officials to send us help. I was repeatedly denied assistance by the Army Lieutenant General Pyatt, citing concerns over optics of the National Guard on Capitol Hill. The D.C. National Guard, many of whom were standing within eyesight of the Capitol, and whose motto is Capitol Guardians, would not arrive until almost 6 p.m. after the fighting was over and the Capitol grounds secured. The New Jersey State Police arrived before they did. To add insult to injury, the Inspector General for the Department of Defense considered the response, quote, appropriate. Besides the MPD, the National Guard was the next largest cadre of personnel that could be deployed to assist my officers. We desperately needed those boots on the ground. The fact that the Chief of Police, responsible for the entire legislative branch of government, was repeatedly denied assistance by the Pentagon is indefensible. The fact that an experienced law enforcement official was constrained by federal law from bringing in life-saving resources for his officers is unfathomable. This type of politicized control over and oversight was and continues to be detrimental to the mission. Why bring in an experienced police chief if you are not going to allow him to do his job? In December 2021, Congress amended 2 U.S.C. 1970, the law that restricted my ability to bring in federal resources. While the amendment now grants the chief authority to call in federal resources only during an emergency, it does not grant the chief authority to request federal resources in advance of an event.
You like how they commit these atrocities in the sense of massive failures to stop something like January 6th, and then they turn around and pass a law to make that the law of the land, to make sure something like that happens again. It's very strategic how they do these things, but once you're able to put all these pieces of the puzzle together, you really get what they're trying to do. It's not that complicated. It's really not. Once you start putting this together, you see exactly what they did. Exactly what they did on January 6th. They had to divert your attention away from what happened in November of 2020 because you were snooping around too much and you were about to figure out how Joe Biden won the election. Once January 6th happened, that's all anybody was talking about. It was the greatest attack. I mean, as Kamala Harris said, it's like September 11th. It was like Pearl Harbor. These are dates that will be etched in American history as some of the worst atrocities to ever hit our shores. Then they didn't have to talk about the election anymore. And since then, they've been ruining the lives of people. Go watch last night's podcast, The Truth About J6. Watch the story of that young man who had his life ruined by the DOJ to the point that he killed himself. The real atrocities in this country are being committed by our own government. I'm out of here. Thank y'all for hanging out with me. Be back again tomorrow with a brand new episode. Until next time, see ya, cook!